Hey guys, it's James from Jurassic Unicast. Welcome back. And today I've got two guests with me. One of them is James Ronan from the Jurassic Park podcast, and he's a paleontology student. We've spoke recently about the two dinosaurs we'd like to see in Jurassic World Dominion. And my other guest is Mike Tharme from the Missing Compies podcast and Free Arms Creations. How you doing both?
Yeah, I'm really good.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Yeah. Going slowly loopy in the lockdown, and laws have changed, and God knows what else. So,
God, let's not go there.
Changing every week, isn't it?
I know, it's crazy. I don't know whether we're coming or going now, but okay. So recently, I noticed something in the media. It was just something popped up on the Jurassic Park fan base on Facebook, just sort of flying around social media, and it was about raptors. And we all love raptors. We love all different portrayals of raptors. So I thought it'd be a good idea to just have a little bit of a discussion about them, like how you feel about certain breeds that have been discovered. I've got a few questions here for James because it's pretty much his sort of the expertise in this, really. I've got quite a good general knowledge of like paleontology and stuff, but James actually studies this, so it'd be a good one for him to find out some answers from him. And Mike, basically, obviously anything you know, great, and just a bit of your opinion as well. So I don't know how knowledgeable you are as well. So
I'd say fairly knowledgeable, not quite as much as James, but in terms of I understand the physiology and their evolution and like the various species and what have you. So yeah, I've got a graspable knowledge. Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to bring up is the famous meaning behind the word raptor, birds of prey. So when this appeared I guess it appeared in the novel, didn't it? And did you know much about the meaning behind it? Did you think it was fact? Did you have to go and check it as fact when you found that out? Or did you already previously knew before you read the book, the Jurassic Park book about raptor meaning bird of prey?
Well, considering I never actually read the book, I didn't even know anything about the whole raptor meaning. In fact, my first introduction to raptors in general was Deinonychus back in the early 90s. So for me, I don't think there was much ever discussed about the whole kind of raptor bird of prey angle on them, apart from the fact that I think it was what was the name for the meaning of the name now? Terrible Claw. There we go. So that was about as much as I got with it, really.
Okay, James, this is an interesting one for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think now. I think it was, again, Deinonychus, which John Ostrom had sort of discovered. But, I mean, I'm trying to remember when I was sort of first introduced to it. It must have been JP, because I can't think of anything before then. Or actually, I suppose, it would have been the book, because I read the book quite early on when I was about 11, 12. I suppose, but then I did see the film way before then, so it must have been the film.
Yeah, I was the same. Like when Alan Grant was talking about it with the computers when they were digging up the dinosaur, I was like, I'm going to check this. So obviously, I did a bit of like homework, so to speak. And then after watching the film later on, it wasn't until many years later actually that I actually read the book. I didn't read the book until I was like a teenager. So it was a nice surprise to see that it was they actually got that from the novel, from the source material. So that was quite a nice little thing. Now, what I'm going to kind of segue into this with this whole birds of prey thing is that the topic of discussion online that I saw was the fact that whether they believed that raptors were pack animals or whether they were solitary. This is where James can come into this, but what I was going to suggest, just to throw a little bit of a spanner in there, was that the word raptor meaning bird of prey, in modern day terms, you don't see birds of prey hunting in packs. They are solitary animals, or they have got a nest, and it's like a male and a female literally hunting to feed their babies. Not so much of a, as soon as they can fledge, they can fly off. They're their own. They make their own, nests and they don't necessarily stay together as a flock of, birds of prey. So, from a paleontologist perspective, how does your colleagues and students that you share all these opinions with deal with this sort of thing?
Well, I mean, like the thing at the moment is we just don't really know, and this new paper that's come out is really interesting. And I saw like the media frenzy that took place, saying there was a lot of headlines about Jurassic Park getting it wrong, but then Jurassic Park got a lot of things wrong. So when I read the paper, I thought it was going to be something really new, and actually, what's in the paper, which is I've got it up now. Actually, it's called "Ontogenetic Dietary Shifts in Deinonychus Antiochus." And it's looking at insights into their ecology and social behavior of raptorial dinosaurs through stable isotope analysis.
Yeah.
Basically, it's looking at the teeth. So it's looking at the isotopic analysis of the teeth of juvenile Deinonychus and sort of adult Deinonychus and comparing it with animals of today. So I think it's comparing it with like alligators. So when I read this the other day, it's 8 pages long, and you can find it online. It's a really interesting read. Basically, they're looking at how the teeth have been used to sort of feed, and it's sort of comparing that with animals of today, and basically making sort of it's a hypothesis that's being put forward for a feeding of Deinonychus sort of feeding more like Komodo dragons compared to pack hunting that we would see in sort of like wild dogs in Africa, for instance. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting hypothesis. And the information from the teeth seems to suggest that the juveniles and the adults ate different prey, which is sort of obvious in a way that the juveniles would eat small reptiles and sort of lizards and sort of insects and things, and then the adult, well, sort of the sub-adult adults would be eating the bigger prey. So it's quite an interesting paper, but I feel like the social media frenzy that tends to happen within paleontology when there's like a new discovery, it's kind of blown it a little out of proportion. I don't want to speak for other paleontologists, but from my point of view, just looking at the information, it's interesting. But from what I gather from the paper, we still don't know enough about the social behaviour, and we can't. The paper is sort of very specific in the sense that it's saying that we can sort of rule out pack hunting a little bit, but the simple fact is we just don't know. And until we get more evidence, scientific evidence from the fossil record, to help us in enabling a better understanding, it's still a hypothesis really in terms of sort of what we think of sort of the parental behavior is, because it seems in the paper, it seems to suggest, like the information that we have seems to suggest there wasn't really much parental behavior from the adults.
Yeah.
It seems to suggest that the juvenile was sort of raised to sort of fend for themselves, but there seems to be sort of a pecking order between the adults and the juveniles in the sense that there's the fossil assemblages that have been found together. So the juveniles and the adults have been sort of found sort of together, which suggests that they were coexisting together. So it wasn't like there wasn't any cannibalism going on,
like in the Lost World novel.
Yeah. So I would really suggest to sort of read the paper, because it's a very interesting read. But as within like the scientific community, it's adding further backstory to these creatures we still don't know enough about. So,
James, for those that obviously have never read it, where would they find the paper? So I might.
So if you just Google, it's in paleogeography, paleoclimatology, paleoecology. So it's on the Elsevier journal page, which is a well-known journal website. So yeah, the title is quite a long title. Basically, if you type in ontogenetic dietary shifts in Deinonychus Antiochus, it should come up, hopefully. It's quite a long title. It's looking at the ecology, basically, of their teeth and their sexual behaviour.
Fair enough.
James, I would put a link in the description.
I would do as well. Yeah, I'll have to send you a copy of it as a link to
I'll
it.
try and get the link. I was trying to think of how I'm going to match this up with photos and all sorts for the video, but it might be worth just putting the link in the description. Would that vary between species though, or would it generally be the gist of what maybe most of them would be on the same?
Well, from what I can gather, I mean, a lot of this paper is looking at building on research that's taken place in the 60s and 70s with John Ostrom, because he was the one who discovered Deinonychus, and he put forward the hypothesis, or the theory, based on an assemblage that was found of multiple specimens of Deinonychus with Tenontosaurus, which is an early hadrosaurid. And what they had found was a lot of these specimens were found in an assemblage with the Tenontosaurus. So they were sort of made the sort of, I suppose, hypothesis that pack hunting was a thing, because obviously they must have brought it down. But the evidence is a bit sketchy in terms of, like, from this study, and it's looking at sort of the dietary sort of pattern and the sort of the unchanging sort of behavior, which they've sort of identified as more closely aligned with Komodo dragons. I mean, basically, a lot of paleontological study is basically comparison with animals of today, because we can only compare like this, what we know within the fossil record, to sort of close relatives today.
Okay,
like,
so
crocodiles and birds.
So why would a go-to be a reptile like a Komodo dragon, as opposed to the actual meaning of raptor and being an eagle or an owl? Like, it's not me being. I'm just not playing devil's advocate. I'm literally just sitting here on the fence with it, just sort of trying to get an idea of.
Well, it's interesting, yeah, because I feel like Deinonychus. Like when I first heard about this information, I actually thought it was about Velociraptor, and because like everyone was making a big thing about it, and then I actually read the paper. It's about Deinonychus, and actually they're two different dromaeosaurs, even though they're closely related. So when you look at sort of Velociraptor, for instance, there's been quite a lot of studies done in terms of how they use sort of their foot claws, and the fact that they had short metatarsus and foot strength, and that was it sort of closely resembles what is seen in sort of eagles and hawks and owls. And so in terms of that animal, I mean, that Velociraptor is very small anyway, but that animal, in terms of how it used its claw, was unlike what it was seen in Jurassic Park, where it was used to disembowel. It wouldn't have been like that at all. From past research, we know that Velociraptor used its claw to like puncture, and it would have maybe sort of attacked sort of the jugular of like we know this from like research that's been done. We sort of know it from what we saw in the Protoceratops fossilized specimen that was found many years ago.
That still amazes me. That specimen is just incredible.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's one of those specimens where we get two dinosaurs fighting, and it's a fighting situation that's sort of unlike what you would expect to be fossilized. Basically, I think we've been really quite lucky with that fossilized specimens because of the way they've been preserved.
Mike, have you seen that? You must have seen that before.
Yes. That was one of the first introductions to Velociraptor for me, with the Protoceratops.
It just baffles me.
Carcass. So yeah, that's quite a significant thing, and the fact that you can see that not only just kind of like the way that Protoceratops was able to defend itself using its jaws, but also where the Velociraptor actually had its foot in the neck of the ceratopsian as well, is a good strong indicator to how these animals may have known how to use, where the weak points on an animal are. So I think there was some research done a while ago about they would hunt young ankylosaurids rather than the adults, because the youngest family members would have softer armor, whereas the adults would have a more intense armor. So it shows that they have that learning capability there.
And they might not have developed the club Is there any specimens of juvenile ankylosaurids?
I'm not too sure, to be honest.
I'm not sure. I think there might be fragmentary pieces, but I don't think there's a complete skeleton anywhere.
Yeah,
so I would imagine that the club being the way it is, that would be something that would be there from birth, and then just kind of like a rattlesnake tail. It'll start out as one small thing, but then as the animal grows, it develops and calcifies over time.
It's interesting.
That's the way I would imagine it anyway.
It is interesting. Like it baffles, like especially specimens like that Velociraptor specimen. Like, how does an animal get, first of all, like, get killed with the prey in that environment, and then remain fossilized together in another environment that allows it not to be, the bones to decay, you know what I mean, and not get picked off. It's like complete, utter chance. It's almost so good to be believed. Like, as much as I do 100% believe it, that it's so good and so precise that it's too perfect, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say it's too perfect, because we have a lot of specimens that have been preserved like this. So, like,
no, that's what I mean. But these
it's just like the fossilization process. It's just the way it's been preserved in natural
that's what I mean. It's so
environments.
perfect. It's amazing how, like, that's happened. That's what I mean. It's just it's where it's so good. You wouldn't. It's hard to believe, like, to some people, how, something that can end and finish like that and be preserved. It's mad. Absolute madness.
Yeah.
I think it's more of the fact. Wait. Oh, go on, Mike.
Go on. No, I was going to say. I think that the way that they were trapped, I think the consensus is that they were caught in what was it now? Like a sand slide, that they were fighting near some dunes, and they just got buried in sand. So that's how they were able to keep the shape and the form. But in terms of, like, the fossilization process, really, it's like, we're lucky to get things like that anyway, just on the basis of the, fossilization. It's like from what I understand anyway, it's like a rare event. It's not like it's everything that gets buried gets fossilized eventually. It's like you have to have the right chemicals in the area. You have to have
that's
the
what
right
I mean.
Conditions, the pressure,
the variables
even
are
the
crazy.
tectonic plates are going to be moving around, so you're going to have to be lucky that these things aren't being exposed or being reabsorbed back into the ground. So it's
mad.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
I always picture, like, that scene from The Land Before Time when they're all stuck in the tar with, like, things like this. How these creatures sort of get stuck together, maybe trying to escape, like the Protoceratops trying to escape from the Velociraptor. It sort of got itself into an environment where it can't get out of, and the Velociraptor's trapped with it, and they've then. I guess that's the only way that makes sense, where they sort of get caught and they slide down, and then they both get killed from impact, maybe, or something. I don't know, but it is really bizarre. Moving on, vocalization. Obviously, a lot of the stuff in Hollywood is all made up with a mixture of different animal calls, just for special effects purposes. What are your views, James, in the paleontological field of these vocalizations of these animals?
I don't know enough about Deinonychus, really, and Velociraptor to sort of say, really, because I'm sort of looking specifically at hadrosaurs at the moment. But from what I know, is that dinosaurs probably didn't really roar as what we see in sort of the films.
Yeah.
And also I feel like the fact that sort of in terms of the communication's been quite vastly exaggerated for the raptors and JP. By JP3, they're smarter. They're smarter than dolphins or primates or whatever. And I just feel like I don't think they would have been that smart. They would have been smart for what they are. But I think they're probably not going to be what we see, like the coordinated attack patterns that we saw. Again, from what I can gather with Deinonychus and stuff in terms of what they thought with pack hunting, I think some of that's down to sort of trackways as well, where groups have been found of trackways of adults or whatever moving together. With Velociraptor, I think it's a bit different because we have a few specimens where we've got combat taking place, but I think it's still a bit sketchy in terms of sort of social behaviour. So, I mean, my personal opinion is that I don't think they would have, like, what we see, like the communication in JP. I don't think they probably would have been like that. It probably would have been more like squealish, or maybe sort of squeakish. Like in terms of sort of like roaring, I don't think it probably would have roared. I suppose in terms of sort of comparisons, when you think about birds, I suppose something, I don't know really, because like there's so many comparisons that you can make with maybe like an owl or whatever, like hooting. I don't know whether it would have done something similar to that. I mean,
I couldn't even tell you what an ostrich sounds like.
Yeah.
What does an ostrich sound like? I couldn't even tell you. Does it hiss? Does it do anything?
I think it does sort of hiss a little bit, I think.
It can hiss. I know they can do like a guttural call, where it's kind of like, it's very much like a
deeper sound,
bellow in the stomach sort of thing. So it's more like you feel it rather than you hear it.
Yeah.
It's that sort of a call.
Weird. It is strange. Like it's like the sounds of dinosaurs does always fascinate me, because it's always like there's always these videos and documentaries about this is what the T-Rex really sounded like, but it's even then they don't really know, do they? Like the ones that are probably the most accurate are probably the herbivores, because they've got the big vocal chambers like in the crests. Like I can imagine the Parasaurolophus, using that big the big head crest as like almost like a sound vacuum to get the trumpety sort of noise that maybe like a cow would make, but on a higher level, more deeper. And look how the way elephants communicate with each other and things. So I can imagine the herbivores being a little bit like the evidence for herbivores sounds being a little bit more relatable than maybe the carnivores as much.
Well, there's more evidence there within the fossil record and what we have in terms of, especially of hadrosaurs, where they've got like nasal crests, because we do think that they did vocalize using those. So there's more evidence there. Whereas with dromaeosaurs, we don't really have. You can look at the nesting sort of patterns and stuff like that, and maybe sort of trackways in terms of movement, but we still don't really know how they sort of organize together socially.
Yeah, because there's only so much behavior and convergent evolution that can transgress different species, that you could almost say, right, okay, well, these animals acted very similar to these types of animals, and with dromaeosaurs, from what I can tell, there's very few species that people can identify with, apart from the obvious, in quotes, pack hunters, where you could argue that they have a similar mentality of lions, that you might have a dominating male, the rest are all females, and then you've got the hatchlings that are more or less left to fend for themselves. But without more evidence to support this, it's much speculation as it is concrete fact, which is, from what I understand, it is pretty much what paleontology is, until something literally lands on the doorstep that can say, right, this is exactly how it looked, or this is exactly how it functioned, or whichever. So
I personally don't think we can rule out pack hunting, in the sense that a group of Deinonychus, maybe sort of lone Deinonychus, may work together to bring down an animal together, and they work together in that way. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to stay together as a group, but they may decide to actually help each other out and be like, we've got this massive animal in front of us, let's all have a go and see what happens.
I just kind of, it's hard to say really, because you look at it's a very mammalian sort of not concept, what's the word, trait, isn't it? Pack mentality, to take down something big, and they all feed in like that, like just using lions for example. But then you look at like tigers, they're completely solitary, so are leopards. So it is a strange thing how we can sort of, especially when you relate dinosaurs to birds. You see a flock of birds, but they're normally evading something, or they're flying from one, or migrating from one area to another, rather as opposed to hunting for something.
just thinking about in terms of like comparison, if you were to compare, say, a dromaeosaur to something like a crow, one crow individually is smart. They I think they have the average brain sort of like mentality of like a 2-year-old or something, but they will work together to problem solve, but they don't always, once they've got to solve that problem, they don't always then share the kill. They will try and dominate each other in order to make sure they have the bigger quantity. So it could even be something as simple as that, you know, they know that, in, like James was saying before, that they can bring down larger prey if they work together, but then once they actually bring that prey item down, it's basically, you know, all bets are off. Whoever gets the best parts is exactly going to get.
Yeah.
Because basically this new paper is saying that their behavior would be more Komodo dragon-like in the sense that there'd be a pecking order. So the big adults would go first in terms of eating, and then maybe the smaller
Pick up
sub-adults would stand back, as well as the juveniles, and wait for them to feed, and then they would join in after. Which is a perfectly sound sort of view. And from the teeth analysis that they've done, it seems to sort of support that, because of, in terms of sort of the differences in terms of what they're eating. But I still don't think there's enough within this paper to be like, yeah, we definitely know, because we just don't.
Yeah, like you look at vultures, they're a bit more like, I guess, you know, just take what you can get sort of thing, innit? With the vultures. I was going to suggest one more before we move on to the Jurassic Park world section. One quick one for James before we move into that. How does the paleontologist like field look at Jurassic Park now in today's, like, are they, but like, do they moan about anything, or do they just accept it as being fiction and stuff?
Okay, so this is quite a diverse set of views within the paleontological community. I've spoken to people who are perfectly happy with the fact that JP's done its sort of own thing. You know, it's done great stuff for paleontology in terms of inspiring lots of kids to go into the field and inspiring many of us in terms of what we do. So there are some people within paleontology who think, you know, JP is just, they're not real, fully 100% dinosaurs, and that's fine. They're not, you know, it's science fiction, it's not science fact. Whereas there are some other paleontologists who are really like, we need to get more, you know, paleontological accurate stuff in here, because the JP franchise has been damaging in the sense of people's perception of dinosaurs. And what I mean by the perception is that the public's perception has been impacted greatly by the Jurassic Park franchise in a negative way, because people now have the expectations of the raptors being 6 feet tall or whatever, and actually Velociraptor was 2 feet tall. And also with, like, another example is the Dilophosaurus, and the fact that Dilophosaurus didn't have a frill, and as far as we know, didn't spit venom. So there's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of differing views within paleontology about the franchise. My personal view is I'm perfectly happy with the JP franchise in terms of what it's done. As much as I'd like to see feathered raptors and feathered dinosaurs in Dominion, that's up to Colin Trevorrow to decide. But if there aren't, then that's fine, because the Jurassic, like I said earlier, it's not science fact, it's science fiction, and it's not a documentary. And the Jurassic Park franchise has never been about accuracy in the sense of these are 100% accurate dinosaurs, because we know they're genetic sort of hybrids. So I'm fine with it. Like, though I will say I want to see more paleontological accurate dinosaurs within media in the sense of film, because the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World franchise is dominated for the past 26, 27 years. And it would be nice to get some new films focusing on more paleontologically accurate dinosaurs, whatever film that may be, whether it's like a new Lost World film, or bring back Dinotopia, or a Primeval film, whatever. You know, I'm all for it, but not within the Jurassic franchise as it stands, because what's gone before it has set up what we're at now. So to change anything now would just be a massive
retcon,
unless it's like a new company that comes in, Dominion, which actually does it, and then that's perfectly fine with me. So yeah.
Fair enough. That sounds cool. Okay, so we're going to move into the Jurassic World and Park section. Kind of that segued in anyway. Okay, so James, what is your favourite Jurassic Park or Jurassic World Raptor out of every single one that we've seen so far in design?
Oh, I love the male Velociraptors in the Lost World, the tiger stripes. I think they're probably my favourite out of them all. Actually, I just love the design, and the fact as well, and the behaviour as well is really quite clear in that film. In the long grass scene, it's really I just love that whole sequence because you get that terror aspect back again that the first film did so well with the Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's only a brief sequence, but I think it just shows that coordinated behaviour quite well that they introduced in the first film and sort of expands on it more.
Yeah, nice. Mike? Is Michael there? Mike's frozen.
Sorry, you're breaking up there. Sorry. You were breaking up.
We've got Mike back. Okay, so Mike, what's your favourite Raptor?
Oh, if I had to go in terms of design, I would actually have to say the female in JP3 is my favourite. I like the skull shape, especially with the raised crests on the snout. I also don't mind the colour scheme too much that they used for the female, although I do prefer the leopard paint job that they did in the first film, but because of the way they shot it and the colours and everything, it just clashed with each other. It just made them look like a greeny grey. So I didn't find out about the leopard print until maybe about probably 5 years ago. So yeah, in terms of that paint scheme, I prefer that. The Lost World Raptors, I like their colours, but I think in terms of their design, they feel like although they're technically the same sculpt from the first film, they didn't redo much difference with the Raptors apart from the animatronics that go inside them. I don't know, that the sculpt seems somehow a little bit off for me. So yeah, it has to be the third one for me.
Okay, my favourite is the Jurassic Park 3 male. The reason being is that I think it's the closest looking animal I think that we've had. They don't look like, they look less monstrous, and I think it's
they look like animals.
They look like animals. It's to do. I think it's the way the artists gave them their behaviour, their vocal communication, their eye sockets. I love their eye sockets.
The red colour's really good, isn't it? For the
and the fact that the eye was round and the pupil was round, it made them animal. It made them feel more like animals rather than genetic monsters. And I think that's the reason why I like the Jurassic Park 3, particularly the males, because of the quills and the colours. And that's the main one we see. We don't really see the female till the end, do we? Really?
Pretty much, yeah.
So
she's kind of like peppered throughout the film, but yeah, she's a main feature at the end of the film.
Yeah, like the main, the ones that you see, the head inside the cylinder and all that sort of stuff is all the tube. Sorry, is all the males, isn't it? But James, I do really like the Lost World. They're definitely probably the males are probably my second choice because, like you said, the behaviour of the pack mentality in the long grass scene, you can see them all moving in from the sides, and it kind of, you're almost seeing on screen what Alan Grant foreshadowed at the beginning of Jurassic Park. And you can see all the carnage happen in front of you. And the stripes are great. I don't actually think we see enough of the stripes in terms of like on screen. Like the only time we see them in close-ups when you got the animatronic stuff, but I don't know. Kind of, I always see that shot of the Velociraptor sticking its head out above the long grass with the bloody snout.
Yeah.
And it's such a good iconic shot, but it's not in the film.
No, it's not. It's a production photo.
It's a production photo, and it's so good. Imagine that, and it like on the actual movie, and it reminded me of the bit when Charlie sort of looked up and found Owen in before she gets blown up in Jurassic World.
Jurassic World, yeah.
But they actually show that of her before that happens, but. This shot in The Lost World of the bloody snout would have added so much more of a scare factor into that scene, I think. But that it also goes in favour of your choice there. It's a great design. It is good, and it's perfect for that environment.
See, I love the Lost World raptors as well because they seem quite feral. And that's like a big thing in the novel, in the Lost World novel that Crichton wrote. That the raptors were just a bit. I like to say deranged, but they were definitely wild.
They're nut jobs, aren't they? They just attack each
other
and
bit crazy, and especially in the book when they get was it Aubrey he's in the cage and they're rolling him down the canyon.
Yeah,
it's just it's a crazy scene, and they're attacking him in it and stuff, and then Sarah's on the bike trying to shoot one. Yeah. It's really well done in the book, but I think I just in the film I think I just like the way we see that behaviour sort of play out a bit because they are really wild and they don't seem to sort of care which we saw in JP anyway, but I think it's sort of in JP3 they seem to be deadly, but at the same time they seem to have sort of a bit more of a I don't know. There seems to be a bit more of a sense of not attacking. I still don't understand really why they didn't attack the group really in JP3, given what we saw previously. But that's a problem with JP3's storytelling. So
yeah. So I think there's some really good designs. I did like the female as well, Mike. To be fair, I think it's to do with the eyes though. Is what makes them that design out of the main ones that I like the most. Moving on, this is a big question. Do you think anything will happen to Blue in Jurassic World Dominion?
Yes.
James?
I don't think it will. Given what happened in Fallen Kingdom, she got shot and she was on a bed and we thought she was going to die and then she didn't. So
okay, so we've got one that does and one that doesn't. Okay, so let's go with you first, Mike. Why do you think? What do you think's going to happen? All along the lines of.
I think it's going to go along the lines of it's either Blue is going to be defending Owen. Or she's going to get to the point where she's gone so far over to being feral and no longer trained that she'll end up being put down effectively. So it's either going to be in a fight sequence or it's going to be self-defense. But I imagine that it's going to be something quite traumatic for Owen either way, in almost like a Turner and Hooch sort of scene almost.
Yeah.
So I can imagine if that's the way they do decide to go down with it, that it will be that sort of edge to it, if you know what I mean.
And I think that will get me on the heartstrings because I think, like I said, it's not until I think you can relate to it in terms of like a pet or something like that, then you can get emotionally attached as such. Obviously, everyone's different. Some people got emotionally attached to the Brachiosaurus. I didn't personally, but others do. And it's when you see people. It's to do with the acting and the emotion. I think if the actors cry, it kind of gets you in that moment. If the actors, don't show as much of emotion, and the scenes, it doesn't linger enough, and it's gone and forgotten about.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't leave you with an afterthought. Whereas something like this, I could imagine being towards the end of the movie if it did happen. You know, you come out actually emotionally drained. That's kind of what I would like in a way. I guess a bit like Endgame, a bit emotionally drained, and just think, wow, okay, that was a tough one.
Because the other argument you could have for Blue's departure from the franchise as well is that she would technically be the last, like, non-feathered raptor in the franchise at that point.
In a
so then you could
she's last of
easily
her generation, and I guess, isn't she?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you could easily then have companies, whether they make them out of profit or whatever, you could have those feathered raptors then incorporated into it. And I know you could have that anyway, whether Blue's alive or not. But either way, that would then be the argument of why has the Raptors got no feathers in the Jurassic Park franchise? Well, anything after that point they will have, and Blue would be effectively the last of that era of Raptors breeds.
Yeah. James, so you're the opposite.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just don't think it's going to happen because, like, we've had a couple of fake-out deaths already. Like, in Jurassic World, I thought she got killed by the Indominus and got thrown, and, it was dead on the floor, and then suddenly she gets up and is attacking it, and then in Fallen Kingdom, she gets shot and then still survives, so she has 9 lives, so I can't see her dying in the third film. I'll be surprised if she does, because they've built up a relationship with her, with Owen, and I feel like if there was going to be a death with Blue, it would have been in Fallen Kingdom, because then that would have given Owen motivation going into the third film.
Okay.
And I feel like there's no motivation there really. Like, Blue's out in the open now and doing whatever she wants. So I can't really see them killing her off.
Here's a question. It's a bit off of the Raptor topic then. So if you think Blue isn't going to die, do you both think that? Well, if you actually, this is I'll go for you first, James. If you don't think Blue's going to die, do you think the Rex will?
Yeah, I think there might be something involving the Rex, though I don't know, because it's such a big part of the franchise, and I do kind of think we're going to get another triumphant roar at the end in some way, but it might be the Rex's last roar, so yeah, I don't know, it could be a death roar, I don't know.
Yeah, see, for me, I think I'm really in between. I say I can't even say that because I haven't asked Mike yet, but he might think both of them are going to die. Do you think both of them are going to die before I go where my opinion is?
Yeah, I think they will. I agree with James that I think that her final scene will be like a death roar sort of thing. So going down the route of like a classic Harryhausen sort of, whether it's, again, after a fight. I mean, I hope she doesn't die during a fight, because then it's almost like everything that she's been through up until that point is almost like, well, what was the point?
Yeah.
But also, I don't think, with the backlash of the Spinosaurus killing the Rex in JP3, that if she's then killed by, say, a Carchodontosaurus or something like that, then it's going to be the same sort of backlash. So I think if she's going to die, it'll either be of natural causes, or that it'll be trying to evade a collapsing building or something like that.
See, I think it's going to have to be natural causes, because I feel like either way it's going to be backlash. Like, if she gets killed by another dinosaur, it's going to be backlash. If she gets, like, for instance, if she gets, like, I don't know, impaled on a log or something, it's going to be very reminiscent of Logan. Or, like, it's going to be, I just feel like any, like, even if she fell off a cliff, like, it'd be, like, so much like the old, the dinosaur films of old. I just feel like if it's going to be anywhere, it's going to be due to old age.
I think we need I say Godzilla 98. I don't mean in terms of the
final moments.
Yeah, the final moments.
Yeah.
And I think the cast, or a certain members of cast, I don't know who or what, need to be present for it.
I was just thinking of the group chat. It's like Alan Grant had kicked the T-Rex in the head.
I've just had a thought, actually, of how the Rex could die, and you probably both wouldn't have seen this film, so I won't be surprised. Have either of you seen The Valley of Gwangi?
I haven't yet, but I keep hearing great things about it, so I need to watch it at some point.
Okay, well, considering that the Rex tends to be, whenever they say, what we're going to do for the Rex here, we'll just do something like Harryhausen, and there's always kind of like a throwback to Gwangi in there somewhere. or I know I'm going to spoil it for you all, but you'll enjoy it regardless. Guanji gets killed in a cathedral that's on fire. So could you imagine the Rex in a cathedral on fire, just burning to death?
Quite brutal.
Yeah.
With all the cats outside.
Yeah, see, now I can't see that purely because we've had something, because we've seen something with a Brachiosaurus which is quite similar.
Yeah.
Having not seen the Brachiosaurus scene, I would say, yeah, why not, actually, to be fair. But, okay, my views, before we finish up, I'm a little bit I think it's going to be one or the other. I don't think we'll get both. We could do. Colin could be just absolutely that cruel and just do both of them. Because there's something to hold, like the new generation of fans, particularly the world fans, the world generation, I shouldn't say world fans, world generation, they have not really had the same attachment to the T-Rex as we have, because we've had 30 years almost of, growing up with it. We had the toys, the Kenner toys, and the big red Rex and the ball was like, they're the main focus of us when we were kids. Every T-Rex that came onto TV, if it didn't look like the Stan Winston one, it weren't a T-Rex. Even though it was completely scientifically, well, I say completely, it's probably the closest animal that they've got right. But, if it weren't the Stan Winston Rex, you didn't want it, especially if it was a toy. So it's kind of like, it's iconic for both. Whereas Blue, they don't particularly know the old Raptors as well as us, because these films, as much as it's hard. It's like people growing up with the new Star Wars trilogy today. They only know, going back and watching the early ones, they might think, oh, this is not what I enjoy. I want the cartoons, I want Clone Wars, I want, the new trilogy, the stuff that we don't value as much as the old stuff. And with Jurassic Park, I think that Rex dying for us, it would have a bigger impact than Blue dying for us. But with the new generation, I think Blue dying would have a bigger impact than the Rex dying. So
I think it's sort of, yeah.
So
I think it... Go on, James.
No, I don't even know what. Go on.
I was just going to say, I think it depends how the franchise, because was supposed to be the last film. Yeah. And then there was that rumour that came out that it wasn't going to be the last film, which was never confirmed by Colin. So I feel like if they kill the Rex off and the Rex dies of natural causes, I think that's a good way to finish the film franchise.
Yeah,
as long as they don't do any more films. Yeah. But if they decide to kill her off and then continue the franchise, I can't see it really working. Yeah. Because the Rex is JP, like it's on the logo.
Yeah. So I think that's quite poetic if she does die with... I say die with the franchise. That's the wrong way to say it. It's more, I guess, get a state funeral that the franchise would be deserving of getting.
Well, I don't know, because it wasn't the same Rex that we had in the Lost World, and we still, I don't know whether it's been confirmed or not, whether the male that we saw in 3 was the same male or a different male or anything. So regardless of whether Rexy or Roberta, I prefer Roberta, dies or not, as long as there's a T-Rex out there anyway, whether it's a new clone or there's happens to be one that's found on another InGen base or something, then although people will be reminiscent in terms of like and remorseful that Roberta has passed on, if she passes on, a Rex will always be able to fill that niche again, because we had it in the Lost World and we had it in JP3 and no one seemed to mind that, so I can't see why there would be any different for any future franchises.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. I'd like to... I don't know, it's hard. I think I think the Rex will die. Purely because of the reason that James said. And if they do carry on the franchise somehow, I think it would be better for them to go back in time than forward and fill in time gaps rather than for them to continue the story. Depends on how this concludes. It all depends on how it concludes. Obviously, if Blue's involved, then there is obviously there's a market there, isn't there? So I don't know. Well, it's so open for discussion, but we haven't got all night, so we're going to call it a day there, I think. Thanks very much for coming on, the pair of you.
It's all right. Welcome. It's been good.
It's been a good intellectual. I've learned a few things. You know, that's what it's all about. Hopefully, some of you guys have as well. And I'd like to hear your comments in the comments section, and what your thoughts are on all the topics that we discussed. Mike, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mike Tharme. You can find me on Instagram as Michael.Tharme. And you can find me on Facebook as well as 3 Arm Creations. You can also find me on YouTube now. I'm trying to build up my YouTube following, so find me under ML Tharme.
Jimbo? James?
So you can find me at Jurassic James 1 on Twitter, and you can also find me on my blog, JurassicFindsBlog.com, and all my social medias linked on there as well, YouTube and Instagram and whatnot. So give me a follow if you want.
Yep. So that is the end of the show, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It helps the channel quite a lot. And click the notification bell for all the stuff that we've coming up soon. Only one thing left to say, gents. Life will find a way. See you later. Hey guys, and welcome back to Jurassic Unicast. I'm James, and I've got 2 guests with me today. The first guest is James Ronan from the Jurassic Park podcast, and he's a paleontology student. We've spoke before previously about this. What do we? Oh, you forgot what we spoke about. What did we talk about?
Like 2 dinosaurs that we wanted to see in Dominion, wasn't it?
That was it. Right, here we go again. I was going to say Spinosaurus. I was like, no, it weren't.
Yeah.